In 2001, after having several Japanese exclusive releases for over a decade, Nintendo's Wars series was finally brought overseas in the form of Advance Wars on the Game Boy Advance. Despite having one of the worst American release dates for a game centered around the theme of war, the game gained a cult following, got a sequel on the system less than 2 years later in June of 2003. However, eventually the series died off, with the last entry in the series releasing in 2008. That is at least until 2021, when Nintendo announced that both Advance Wars 1 and 2 would be remastered from the ground up and released in April of 2022. And then it was delayed due to the conflict in Ukraine.
Man, if I had a Reese's Cup for every point-in-time release window Advance Wars 1 had, I'd have 2 more than I really should.
Well, after this indefinite delay, the game finally released in April of 2023 on the Nintendo Switch as Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp.
In this episode of Cartridges and Consoles, we'll dive into this remaster of a niche Nintendo franchise and see how it breathed new life into an old series, but also proved how some things from the series' past should have stayed there.
Now, let me preface this by saying that describing everything about Advance Wars is like trying to recite a math textbook word for word. So I'll try to make this sound as simple as possible, but sit back, relax, and find yourself a gallon of your favorite drink, because we're going to be here for a while. Advance Wars is a turn-based strategy game where you manage an army and must defeat an opponent army. Your army consists of units on 3 fronts: land, air, and sea. Land units are the most common asset to an army and consist of ground troops and vehicles. Ground troops' goal is to try and capture territories, of which there are 4 major types: cities, which act as beacon points; factories, which allow you to build land units; harbors, which allow you to build sea units; and airports, which allow you to build air units. The other type of land units are vehicles, of which there are multiple kinds. You have 2 to 3 types of tanks, which specialize in direct combat against other vehicles or troops, meaning they can only fire at a target directly next to them; anti-air units, which can shoot down air units alongside other vehicles in direct combat; recon units, which move the farthest of all vehicles and are mainly used for scouting and combating ground troops directly; APCs, or armored personnel carriers, which don't engage in combat but can transport ground troops around the map faster and can supply all units with ammo and fuel; and finally, 3 types of units that specialize in indirect combat: artilleries, rockets, and missiles. These units cannot target anything directly next to them, but can target anything within the area of effect around them, meaning they're meant to be kept hidden and shoot from afar. Artillery and rockets can target other land units as well as sea units, while missiles exclusively target air units. Speaking of air units, that category of units includes transport copters, which can move ground troops around via the air; battle copters, which are the cheapest attack option of the air fleet but can only attack other copters, ground, and sea units; bombers, which can only attack ground and sea units but supply heavy amounts of damage; and fighter jets, which supply massive amounts of damage toward other air units but can only attack said air units. Lastly are the sea units, which consist of landers, which can transport 2 ground units from one shoreline to another; battleships, which specialize in indirect combat similar to rockets; submarines, which can dive and directly attack other sea units without being spotted; and cruisers, which can attack submarines and air units in direct combat while also acting as a place for transport or battlecopters to be stationed. All of these units have a health value, a set amount of ammo, and a set amount of fuel. It's your goal to try and regulate your units to make sure you don't run out of fuel or ammo, and that a unit's health doesn't drop to 0. One of the easiest ways to achieve all 3 is to capture territories with the ground troops, as cities, factories, harbors, and airports act as healing and supply stations for all of your units. To win a match, you must either eliminate all your opponent's units or capture their HQ with one of your ground troops like you would a city. Got all that? Good, because that's just the basics. Alongside your army, you have to choose a commanding officer or CO. This CO is the boss of the operations, and almost every CO has a different modifier making them stand out. For example, Max's direct combat units are more powerful on average, while his indirect combat units are weaker. While on the flip side, Grit's indirect combat units are more powerful than his direct combat units. Depending on the CO you choose, your game and strategy can change drastically. These COs also have powers that charge up over time and can aid you in battle. For example, Andy's CO Power Hyper Repair heals all of his units for 2 health each, and Olaf's CO Power Blizzard makes it snow for a day, which severely hinders your opponent's movement capabilities. These CO powers take a bit to charge up though, depending on the CO you choose, so you need to use them sparingly. Additionally, in Advance Wars 2, you have a superpower that is a more powerful version of your CO power, but takes longer to charge up, so you have to choose which power you'd go for. As for game modes, there are several to choose from, starting with the campaign mode. This mode allows you to play through the storylines of Advance Wars 1 and 2. The first game has you playing as the Orange Star Army and traversing through the nations and armies of Blue Moon, Green Earth, and Yellow Comet to find information on an unknown army known as Black Hole, while the second game has you taking on the role of all 4 nations in an attempt to hold back and defeat Black Hole once and for all. Some missions in both campaigns also have different methods to achieve victories, such as reach a certain area, survive a set amount of days, or destroy a specific enemy unit or units. There's also 3 methods to play multiplayer against your friends, these being local multiplayer on one system, wireless play with multiple Nintendo Switch systems, and online multiplayer via Nintendo Switch Online. You also have the War Room, which allows you to train against CPU COs on maps also accessible in multiplayer. On top of this, the game also has a map design mode where you can make your own maps, and finally there's Hachi's Shop where you can buy items with coins you earn in the campaign and war room, such as pre-made maps and COs to use in multiplayer, alongside artwork and music you can view or listen to in the game's gallery. Now, obviously the game seems like a lot to pack in all at once, but the game does a very good job of spacing out all this information for you. If you start with the campaign mode, there are several tutorial levels that gradually introduce you to all the concepts I listed and more. 90% of the time, you won't be caught blindsided by something you didn't expect because the game will tell you almost everything ahead of time. The COs themselves are also very good to play as. Some of them do take a while to get used to, but they all have a very strong set of advantages and disadvantages. Plus, there's a CO for almost every style of play. Whether you like having lower powered units at a cheaper cost, insist on using battlecopters and ground troops, or want to sail the seas with a stronger naval presence, you'll find a CO that fits your preference. The game also feels very satisfying overall to play. It feels so rewarding when you're able to take down an adversary unit convincingly or able to make a risky move work. However, in the instance a move doesn't work, you have the option to either reset your current turn or yield and restart the mission from scratch with no penalty. There are more quality of life features sprinkled into the game like this, such as the option to fast forward the combat phases or skip dialogue cutscenes if you've seen them before. The game also has a surprising amount of charm to it. It's worth noting that this game was developed by WayForward, and it's obvious this is the first time they worked directly with Nintendo, as you can tell they put everything they could into this game. The game's cutscenes and art style have that signature WayForward anime-esque look to them, and it does suit the game well overall. On top of this, the game has near full voice acting with a lot of recognizable actors contributing to the cast, including Veronica Taylor, who voiced Ash from the Pokemon anime, Kaiji Tang, who voices Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen, Sungwon Cho, better known as content creator BroZD, and even Patrick Seitz, who voiced Mortal Kombat Scorpion and Dio from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. The remix soundtrack they made for the game also stands out. Alongside your basic music tracks, every CO has a unique theme alongside an alternative theme for when their power is activated. And there are some themes among the bunch that are absolute bangers. Now, granted, while there are some music tracks that some people claim sound inferior to the GBA versions, there still is a noticeable increase in music production quality present in this remake. However, the game is far from perfect as there are some noticeable flaws. The biggest flaw, in my opinion, revolves around the campaign's difficulty balance. This is more present in the first game's campaign than the second, but there are numerous instances of difficulty spikes throughout both campaigns. You'll go from simple tutorial-esque levels to then being fed to the birds. The enemy AI will become overly aggressive, you'll have less and less openings to attack, etc. Now granted, when making a faithful remake like Reboot Camp is, you're going to have these issues as the initial balance when the game was first released may not have been great, but I do wish this was partially addressed when the game was remade. Like, I shouldn't really be having a lot of trouble in the 6th mission of the game on the casual difficulty setting. Another minor complaint I have is how to get items in the shop. These items are put in the shop by completing modes, and you can then purchase these items with coins, unless it's the campaign challenge stages you get for completing the campaigns, which are free of charge. However, the amount of coins you get is based on your rank in the campaign or war room missions. I can understand why this is the case, but this makes the game a bit grindy and is a tad bit annoying if you want to get everything from the shop. Now, I haven't completed every mission in the game, but apparently completing the challenge campaigns gives you enough money to buy everything, and you can gain coins from replaying the same mission over and over again. But I do wish collecting coins was better handled.
Overall, Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp is a very good remake of the first 2 internationally released War Series games and tries something new to try and stand out from its predecessors. The faithfulness to the original games is undeniably strong, and that does cause some issues, but there's also a lot of modern charm that the developers put in, and it clearly pays off. Whether you played the original games on the Game Boy Advance or have never touched a turn-based strategy game in your life, the Advance Wars remakes are a perfect place to start and can offer a great introduction to the genre as a whole. Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp on the Nintendo Switch gets my rating of 7 cartridges out of 10.